Boom! What's up, everyone? Marc Lobliner, TigerFitness.com. When the ANBF launched off, a natural bodybuilding organization, I am the vice president of the ANBF, and I don't really play an active role day to day, but I'm still listed as such, and there I go. Now, I've always been a supporter of all bodybuilding organizations, so while I am putting on a pro show as well as a pro qualifier ANBF show in November, the week before Thanksgiving, called the Turkey Bowl. Here's the deal. I'm also putting on a WPA pro qualifier that goes to the IFPA and an IFPA pro show, the Uprising, on June 25th of this year. It's going to be the biggest show. All proceeds of both go to charity, Operation Heroes Connect, my girl T's fund, as well as the Mason Middle School. We plan on raising over $20,000 for the military alone. That's my goal. That's what I'm setting forth to do. Now, when the ANBF launched, they did something really controversial, and that is allow TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy, when medically prescribed by a doctor, to be used by competitors if you can, of course, show the doctor's prescription, pass a lie detector that you're not taking anything over the given dose, and that's pretty much that. Now, that has provided a little bit of a discrepancy in them being allowed to work with other organizations in allowing athletes, basically using drug tests from other shows. Like if you do a drug test in the the OCB, it crosses over the WNBF. You see what I'm saying? The INBF. There's so many gosh darn acronyms. Anyway, a lot of these guys will reciprocate drug tests, and it saves on costs and all that good stuff. And they allow different pro cards. For example, the WNBF, INBF, the WNBF, IFPA were accepting each other's pro cards for a while. That's why we saw some great competitions with Brian Whitaker doing the Yorton and things like that. My stance on TRT and natural bodybuilding has wavered, and I don't really have a stance. However, when the ANBF voted on TRT being allowed, now keep in mind, I don't compete naturally. I compete in NABA. I've competed in NPC. I've never competed in a natural organization. Regardless of what I take or don't take, I just never have. A lot of non-naturals, a lot of naturals compete in the NPC and other organizations. And I think that's the biggest obstacle for natural bodybuilding on a tangent, is not competing with each other, but getting more naturals who compete in NPC to compete with their own in the OCB, in the WPA and the ANBF, all those other organizations. I think they're kind of going, they're kind of going for all this infighting when there's this huge market of individuals who can compete with each other, with like-minded individuals who aren't enhanced and actually have a good time doing it. I think they're way better put on shows. And judging by the shit show I went through at NABA, I've never been to a natural show, and I've been there and I've head judged to dozens, if not hundreds of them, and they're all put on phenomenally. So my opinion on TRT and bodybuilding and natural bodybuilding, and my buddy Chad Austin, he had a point. He's like, I understand TRT's medical, but it's nobody's right to compete. We have a rule. We have to draw the line in the sand. If you're administering exogenous testosterone, that's unfair. Whereas I go a step further in saying it's unfair because if you're a natural bodybuilder who's dieting into the deep, dark recesses of prep, getting down in the 4 or 5% body fat range, your testosterone is going to be that of a female castrated rat, which doesn't even make sense. That's how low it is. So not only are you not going to be, your testosterone is going to maintain. So if your doctor has you set where you administer testosterone to where you're 700 every week, your blood levels stay at 700. You're doing, let's say, 150 milligrams of cypionate a week. That's still much more than the guy who's dieting at 4% body fat, 100% natural, whose testosterone is probably at 300 or 200 or even lower because his body's in survival mode and his hormones aren't being produced optimally. That's where I see it being unfair. Where I have changed my mind a little bit, and as someone who promotes in both the WPA, IFPA, which is the natural bodybuilding, the biggest pro organization, natural bodybuilding, as well as what's probably, in my opinion, the biggest feeder in the IFPA, is the WPA, as well as the ANBF, which allows TRT, which is a pro and an amateur organization. The ANBF has had no drug test, they've allowed TRT for the last few years. In those few years, they have just this year caught 2 cheaters. So we find that people who cheat or do drugs generally aren't prescribed by their doctor. Secondly, of the people who win, only 3 winners at probably 30 or 40 shows have been on TRT. In fact, I believe they've only had 3 TRT competitors. It's really, really, really low. And then you get into a whole slippery slope, and that's fine because they're private organizations and they can do whatever the fuck they want to do. However, you get into that slippery slope where what about insulin for diabetics? Insulin is more potent and anabolic than testosterone itself. What about thyroid medication for people with thyroid disorders? Testosterone deficiency is a disorder just like diabetes, just like thyroid disorders. Some people are at serious health risks. I'm not talking about the guy who can't just keep muscle on. I'm talking about some people who have serious endogenous testosterone issues due to some endocrine issue or whatever else. So my opinion is, here's what I think the organization should do. And as someone who speaks to Remo daily, speaks to Kent probably 2 or 3 times a week, who's the president of the ANBF, Remo is the WPA and IFPA president, I think they should reciprocate pro cards because I think they're both really good organizations. I think what they should do is the ones who have been eligible to compete as a pro but do TRT should not be eligible to compete as IFPA pros. However, they're able to compete as ANBF pros because they have fit that organization's drug policies. ANBF and IFP ANBF and the WPA have extremely similar, if not the same, drug policies other than the TRT. So once you have that variable where TRT people can't compete as pros, you can't use your pro card there, then you're stuck in the NBF. So you're still competing as a pro, just not in the IFPA. However, you look at DFAC and you look at the WNBF and which is now OCB switch, they're now feeding in the WNBF, they follow straight WADA, which I think is stupid. And I think the WNBF and I think OCB and DFAC are pretty much stupid. They ban things like higetamine, which you've seen me done. They also ban things by going through strict WADA like glycerol. That's Hydromax. That's found in a lot of your favorite pre-workouts, like mine, like Vasky. Higetamine is found in a lot of pre-workouts like Clash, and a lot of pre-workouts, it's a very benign substance. Caffeine has even been banned by WADA. Just looking at it that way, I believe that the best way to go about it is a modified WADA, where you look at it with common sense glasses and you say, should we really ban caffeine for muscle building beyond normal, natural realms, being that you can find caffeine in everything from coffee to blah, blah, blah. They also ban 7-keto and other ambiguous agents, which aren't going to give you too much of an unfair competitive advantage above that of creatine or even proper veggie intake. With that said, I believe TRT, in my opinion, should not be allowed in natural bodybuilding. I've stood by this. However, I do believe that I have been proven wrong somewhat because people on TRT tend to look like shit and don't win shows. And usually when they go on TRT, they don't compete naturally. They'll compete in the NPC or NABA. However, if you are on TRT and that's all you're on, you're not taking anything in addition to your TRT, you do have the option to compete in the ANBF. However, as history predicates, you will get your ass kicked by a guy who's not on TRT, who just diets and trains harder than you. As far as the WPA, they do not allow it. IFPA, they do not allow it. And that's their right as a private business. It's nobody's right to compete. It's a privilege. And it's a privilege for me to be a part of these organizations and help create these places. See, if you're enhanced, you could go to NAB or the NPC. That's your thing. If you're not, or the GBO, which is another organization. If you are only on medically induced TRT, you could compete in the NBF. If you are on nothing, except for supplements and whatever else, you can compete in the WPA, IFPA. If you do nothing but drink water and eat fruits and vegetables, you compete in those other guys. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. Let's have some intelligent conversation below. The comment section is open. I love you guys. I want to hear it, and I'm going to partake in the conversation. I'm Marc Lobliner, TigerFitness.com, because being a fake natty, I don't even know how that fits in here, but that's not a game.